The summer of 2017 smelled like motor oil and freedom. Vivian Ashford was 16 years old, standing in the garage behind Ashford Grand Hotel, watching her father work on his most prized possession. A 1973 Harley-Davidson Superglide painted the exact blue of a cloudless summer sky. Theodore Ashford had grease on his hands and a smile on his weathered face as he tightened the final bolt on the carburetor. "Come here, sweetheart," he said, wiping his hands on a rag that had seen better days. "I want to show you something." Vivian approached slowly, her sneakers scuffing against the concrete floor. At 16, she was already showing signs of the woman she would become. Sharp eyes, determined chin, a mind that never stopped, calculating, planning, dreaming. Theodore patted the leather seat of the Harley. The chrome gleamed under the fluorescent lights like liquid silver. "This bike," he said quietly, "isn't about speed. It's not about showing off or making noise or proving anything to anyone." He ran his calloused palm along the gas tank, tracing the curves with something close to reverence. "It's about freedom, Vivian. The freedom to choose your own road, to go where you want to go, be who you want to be, love who you want to love." Vivian watched her father's face. The afternoon light caught the gray in his hair, the lines around his eyes. He was 52 years old. He had built Ashford Grand from nothing. A single beachfront property purchased with borrowed money and endless hope. He had worked 18-hour days for 30 years. He had sacrificed vacations and weekends and sleep. But in that moment, with his hand on the motorcycle, he had restored piece by piece over the course of a decade. Theodore Ashford looked like the youngest man in the world. "When I'm gone," he continued, and Vivian felt her stomach clench at the words, "I want you to remember this. Not the hotel, not the money, not any of the things people think matter." He turned to face her, his blue eyes steady and warm. "I want you to remember that your old man loved two things more than anything else in this world. This bike and you." Vivian felt tears prick at her eyes. She blinked them back, embarrassed by the sudden surge of emotion. "Dad, don't talk like that. You're not going anywhere." Theodore laughed, a deep rumble that echoed off the garage walls. I know. I'm being dramatic. Your mother always says I should have been an actor instead of a businessman." He pulled Vivian into a hug, and she breathed in the familiar scent of him. Motor oil and coffee and the expensive cologne Eleanor insisted he wear. "Whatever road you choose," Theodore whispered into her hair, "I'll be proud of you, always." 3 weeks later, Theodore Ashford drove his Mercedes through a red light on Ocean View Boulevard. The other driver was a 19-year-old college student who had been texting her boyfriend. Theodore died on impact. The funeral was held on a Tuesday. Gray skies, cold rain, 500 people packed into St. Michael's Cathedral to pay their respects to the man who had built an empire from nothing. Vivian stood at the front of the church in a black dress that felt like armor. Her mother, Eleanor, sat beside her, rigid and composed, not a single tear marring her perfect makeup. Vivian I did not cry either. She had not cried since the phone call, since the drive to the hospital, since the moment a doctor with kind eyes told her that her father was gone and there was nothing anyone could have done. She did not cry because crying meant accepting. And Vivian Ashford was not ready to accept that the man who had taught her to ride a bike, who had read her bedtime stories, who had promised her the world and meant every word, was never coming home. After the funeral, Eleanor sold the Harley. Vivian found out 3 months later when she came home from her freshman year at Yale for Christmas break. She had walked into the garage expecting to see the flash of blue paint, the gleam of chrome. The garage was empty. "It was just collecting dust," Eleanor said when Vivian confronted her. "Your father would have wanted us to move forward, not cling to relics of the past." "That bike was his whole life," Vivian said, her voice trembling with rage she did not fully understand. "He spent 10 years restoring it. He loved that bike." Eleanor's face remained impassive. "He loved a lot of things. That doesn't mean we have to keep all of them." Vivian returned to Yale the next day. She did not speak to her mother for 6 months, and she never stopped looking for the bike. 8 years had passed since that summer in the garage. 8 years since the funeral. 8 years since Vivian Ashford had lost the two things she loved most in the world, her father and Ethan Calloway. The morning of December 15th, 2025, Vivian stepped through the revolving doors of Ashford Grand Hotel at precisely 7:47 in the morning. She was 24 years old. She wore her signature royal blue blazer over pressed slacks, the color an unconscious tribute to a motorcycle she had never stopped thinking about. The marble floor of the grand lobby reflected her reflection like a mirror. Crystal chandeliers cast soft light across the soaring ceilings. The scent of fresh flowers drifted from the arrangements that were changed every single day without fail. Ashford Grand was worth $890 million. Vivian had built it herself, not from scratch. Her father had left her the foundation. A struggling beachfront hotel drowning in debt. A mother who wanted to sell to developers. A board of directors who thought a 21-year-old girl had no business running anything. Vivian had proved them all wrong. She had graduated from Yale in 3 years instead of 4. She had taken out loans against her own future. She had bought out her mother's shares. She had fired the old management team and hired new blood. She had rebranded, renovated, reimagined. And she had won. 4 new properties in Charleston, Savannah, Nashville, and Costa Rica. Revenue up 400%. A reputation that brought celebrities and politicians and people willing to pay $2,000 a night for the privilege of staying in a room that bore her father's name. Theodore would have been proud. Vivian told herself that every morning when she walked through these doors. She told herself that every night when she fell asleep in the penthouse suite that had once been his office. She told herself that so often she had almost started to believe it. But this morning something felt different. The air conditioning seemed colder than usual. The morning light through the floor-to-ceiling windows seemed sharper, more acute. The soft jazz playing from hidden speakers seemed to carry a melancholy note Vivian had never noticed before. She stopped in the middle of the lobby frowning. Something was different. She just could not figure out what. Derek, her assistant manager, appeared at her elbow with a tablet and an apologetic expression. "Welcome back, Ms. Ashford. The Miami conference went well." "Well enough," Vivian said absently, her eyes scanning the lobby. "What do I need to know?" Derek launched into his usual morning briefing. Occupancy rates, VIP arrivals, minor issues with the kitchen ventilation, a water leak in one of the guest bathrooms on the 4th floor. Vivian listened with half her attention. The other half was still trying to identify what felt so strange about this morning. Then she saw him. A man in a blue maintenance uniform knelt near the fountain at the center of the lobby. He was not mopping floors. He was working on the fountain itself, tools spread around him, hands moving with practiced precision. His back was to her, but Vivian would have recognized those shoulders anywhere. Broad but lean, moving with unconscious grace even while performing the most mundane task. Dark hair longer than he used to wear, it curling slightly at the nape of his neck. He was humming something under his breath, a habit that made her heart stop dead in her chest. No, it could not be. Vivian's briefcase slipped from her nerveless fingers. It hit the marble floor with a crack that echoed through the entire lobby. Several heads turned. The man at the fountain froze. Slowly he stood up. Slowly he turned around. And Vivian Ashford found herself staring into the gray eyes of Ethan Calloway. 8 years evaporated in the space of a single heartbeat. Vivian was 18 again, sneaking out of her father's penthouse suite to meet the boy who made her laugh until she could not breathe. The boy who taught her to ride his motorcycle. The boy who kissed her like she was the only thing that mattered in the entire universe. Ethan at 22 had been all rough edges and wild dreams. A mechanic's apprentice who worked on bikes during the day and talked about freedom at night. He had grease under his fingernails and philosophy books on his nightstand. He had looked at the stars like they meant something and looked at her like she was the brightest star of all. Ethan at 30 was something else entirely. The rough edges had been worn smooth by time and hardship. His face was leaner, harder. Lines had appeared at the corners of his eyes that had not been there before. His jaw was sharper. His hands were rougher. But those eyes, God, those eyes had not changed at all. They still held the same intensity, the same quiet intelligence, the same depth that had made Vivian fall hopelessly, irreversibly in love with a boy everyone said was not good enough for an Ashford. He looked at her now with an expression she could not read. Surprise, recognition, something else, something guarded and careful and impossibly sad. "Ms. Ashford," he said quietly. The formality of it, the careful politeness, the way he said her name like they were strangers who had never met. It broke something inside her. "Ethan," she managed. Her voice sounded strange to her own ears. Too high, too breathless, too raw. What are you? How long have you been working here? 4 months. He set down the wrench he had been holding, wiped his hands on a rag. His movements were deliberate, controlled, like he was giving himself time to think. I handle maintenance and repairs, started in August. 4 months. He had been working in her hotel for 4 months, and she had not known. How was that possible? Then again, Vivian had been traveling constantly. Charleston, Savannah, Nashville. 6 weeks in Costa Rica for the new resort. She had been everywhere except home. I didn't realize, she said lamely. I didn't know. No reason you would. Ethan's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. I keep to the back of house mostly, early morning shift. I'm usually gone by the time the suits arrive. The suits, the executives, the people like her. There was so much unsaid in those clipped sentences, so many years and miles and silences packed into the space between them. Vivian wanted to say 1,000 things. Why didn't you call? Why didn't you write? Did you think about me? Did you hate me? Do you still? But her throat had closed around the words, and all she could do was stare at the man she had never stopped loving. The man who had vanished from her life without explanation or apology. The moment stretched taut like a wire about to snap. Then a child's voice shattered the silence. Daddy, Daddy, look what I found. A small blonde girl in a yellow sundress came barreling around the corner, ponytail flying, white sneakers squeaking on the marble. She was clutching something in her hands, chattering with the boundless excitement of childhood. She was perhaps 7 years old. She had Ethan's gray eyes and a gap-toothed smile that lit up her entire face. Vivian felt the floor drop out from beneath her. Ethan's expression transformed instantly. The careful blankness melted away, replaced by something warm and real and infinitely tender. He crouched down to the little girl's level, opening his arms. Hey, Rosie, I thought you were coloring in the break room with Miss Patricia. I was, Rosie said breathlessly, but look. She thrust her prize toward him. A starfish, dried and perfect, its 5 arms spread wide. I found it by the pool storage room. Can we keep it? Please, please, please. Ethan examined the starfish with exaggerated seriousness, like it was the greatest treasure ever discovered. That's pretty special, he said. But you know what starfish belong to the ocean. Maybe we should put it in one of the decorative shells by the fountain so other people can enjoy it too. Okay, Rosie agreed easily. Then her attention shifted. She looked up at Vivian with the unabashed curiosity that only children possess. No fear, no calculation, just pure, honest interest. You're really tall, Rosie announced. Are you a model? Despite everything, Vivian felt her lips twitch. No, sweetheart, I'm not a model. I work here. Rosie's eyes widened. Are you Daddy's boss? The question hung in the air like a held breath. He says his boss is super smart. Rosie continued, oblivious to the tension. He says she built this whole hotel almost by herself and she works harder than anyone he's ever met. Vivian's heart stuttered. She looked at Ethan. He had stood up, one hand resting gently on his daughter's shoulder. His expression was carefully neutral, but she saw something flash in his eyes. Something that looked almost like pride. Or maybe just the ghost of what they used to be. He says you probably don't remember him, Rosie added thoughtfully, because you're really important and you meet lots of people. But he remembers you. Rosie, Ethan's voice was quiet but firm. Ms. Ashford is busy. We should let her get to work. But I have more questions, Rosie protested. Like, why is she wearing blue? Blue is my favorite color. Is it her favorite too? It is, Vivian said softly. She crouched down, ignoring the way her knees threatened to buckle. Up close, she could see that Rosie had a small scar on her chin and wore a bracelet made of colorful beads. Her fingernails were painted pink with tiny stars. Blue was my dad's favorite color too, Vivian added. He had a motorcycle that was this exact shade of blue. Rosie's face lit up. Daddy has a motorcycle. It's blue too, like the ocean. It goes vroom vroom, and sometimes he lets me sit on it and pretend I'm riding to faraway places. Vivian's blood ran cold. She looked up at Ethan. His face had gone pale. A blue motorcycle, Vivian heard herself say. What kind? Rosie scrunched up her face in concentration. It's a Harley something. Daddy's been fixing it up forever. He says it's almost as old as Grandma would have been. A Harley, blue like the ocean, almost as old as Ethan's mother would have been. Vivian's mind raced calculating dates, possibilities, impossibilities. Rosie, Ethan said, his voice strained, why don't you go put that starfish by the fountain like we talked about? But I want to talk to the pretty lady more. Later, baby girl, I promise. Rosie sighed the dramatic sigh of a 7-year-old who knows she is being managed. But she took her starfish and skipped toward the fountain, ponytail bouncing with each step. When she was out of earshot, Vivian stood up. That motorcycle, she said, where did you get it? Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Estate sale, he finally said. About 6 years ago, it was in rough shape when I bought it. Rusted, broken, forgotten. He paused. Like me. The words hit Vivian like a physical blow. I spent 2 years rebuilding it, Ethan continued. Every bolt, every wire, every piece of chrome. I didn't know whose bike it was when I bought it. I didn't know anything except that it was beautiful and broken, and I needed something to fix. His gray eyes met hers. I needed something to save Vivian, because I couldn't save us. Vivian's vision blurred with tears she refused to shed. When did you find out, she whispered, that it was his? About a year into the restoration, I found an envelope taped inside the saddlebag compartment, hidden, like someone put it there and forgot about it. Ethan reached into his back pocket and pulled out a worn piece of paper, folded and refolded so many times the creases had become permanent scars. There was a letter inside, he said quietly, in your father's handwriting. He held it out to her. Vivian's hands were shaking as she took it. The paper was soft with age, the edges worn smooth by years of handling. She unfolded it slowly, reverently, like she was unwrapping something sacred. The handwriting was her father's. She would have recognized it anywhere. Bold strokes, confident letters. The penmanship of a man who had never doubted himself a day in his life. The date at the top was August 3rd, 2017, 3 weeks before he died. My dearest Vivian, I'm writing this letter because I'm not sure I'll have the courage to say these words out loud. Your old man was never very good at the emotional stuff. Your mother would tell you that's the understatement of the century. I've been watching you this summer. Watching you grow. Watching you fall in love. Yes, sweetheart, I know about the boy. I've seen the way you sneak out at night. The way you smile when you think no one's looking. The way you've started humming songs I've never heard before. I'm not supposed to approve. Eleanor certainly doesn't. She thinks he's beneath you. Too poor. Too rough. Too different from the life she imagined for you. But here's the thing, Vivian. When I look at that boy, I see myself. 30 years ago, I was him. Grease under my fingernails. Nothing to my name except dreams and determination. Everyone told me I would never amount to anything. Everyone except your grandfather who gave me a chance when no one else would. That boy looks at you the way I looked at this hotel when I first bought it. Like you're something worth fighting for. Like you're something worth building a life around. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if he'll prove himself or disappoint you. I don't know if this love will last or fade like summer into fall. But I know this. Whatever road you choose, I'll be proud of you. Always. Love you to the moon and back. Dad, Vivian read the letter 3 times, then she read it again. Then she looked up at Ethan through eyes so blurred with tears she could barely see. He knew, she whispered. He knew about us. Ethan nodded slowly. He knew, and he didn't disapprove. He saw something in me that I didn't even see in myself. Vivian clutched the letter to her chest. All these years, all this time, she had believed her father would have hated Ethan, would have forbidden them from being together, would have sided with her mother in keeping them apart. But Theodore Ashford had seen the truth. He had seen the boy behind the grease and the rough edges. He had seen someone worth believing in. He had seen his own reflection in the eyes of a young man who looked at his daughter like she was the only star in the sky. Why didn't you tell me, Vivian asked. When you found this letter, why didn't you find me? Ethan's jaw tightened. I tried. 2 words. Simple. Devastating. I tried, Vivian. I called the hotel. I sent emails. I even drove to New York when I heard you were working there. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Your mother's people are very efficient at making unwanted visitors disappear. Eleanor, of course. But the letter, Vivian pressed. You could have sent the letter. And what have it intercepted like everything else? Have your mother burn it like she probably burned all my other letters. Other letters. Vivian felt her stomach drop. What other letters? Ethan stared at her for a long moment. You really don't know, he said quietly. Do you, Washwan? Know what? I wrote you 16 letters, Vivian. 16. After your father died, after everything fell apart. I wrote you every week for 4 months. 16 letters. Vivian's legs gave out. She would have collapsed right there in the middle of her own lobby if Ethan had not caught her. His hands were strong and warm on her arms, steadying her, holding her up. I told you everything, he said, his voice rough with old pain. About my mother getting sick, about the burst I got at the garage, about how I was saving every penny so I could prove to your family that I was worth something. His grip tightened. I told you I loved you, Vivian. 16 different ways in 16 different letters. And you never wrote back. Not once. I never got them. The words came out broken, shattered. I never got a single letter. I never got any calls. I checked my phone every 5 minutes for months waiting for you to reach out. Vivian looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. I thought you left me, Ethan. I thought you decided I wasn't worth the fight. Something cracked behind Ethan's eyes. 8 years of pain, 8 years of wondering, 8 years of believing the worst about each other when the truth had been something far more sinister. Your mother, Ethan said flatly, she told me you didn't want to see me anymore, that you had moved on, that I was embarrassing you by trying to contact you. She lied. I know that now. She destroyed everything. Our letters, our calls, our chance. Vivian's voice broke on the last word. Ethan released her arms and stepped back. His face had gone carefully blank again, the mask of a man who had learned to protect himself from hope. It doesn't matter anymore, he said quietly. That was 8 years ago. We're different people now. It matters to me, Vivian. It matters, Ethan. It matters because I spent 8 years thinking you abandoned me. 8 years building walls around my heart because I thought love meant getting left behind. She held up the letter, her father's letter. And now I find out that my father approved of you, that you tried to fight for us, that my mother stole everything and let me believe the worst. Vivian took a shaky breath. Don't tell me it doesn't matter. Don't tell me to forget. I've been trying to forget for 8 years and it hasn't worked yet. Ethan was silent for a long moment. In the distance, Rosie was arranging and rearranging the starfish in the decorative shell display, singing softly to herself. The morning light caught her blonde hair, turning it to gold. I have a daughter now, Ethan finally just said. She's my whole world. Everything I do, everything I am, is for her. He looked at Vivian with something she could not name. Whatever we were, whatever we could have been, it doesn't change the fact that I'm not the same person anymore. I'm not the boy who dreamed about riding to California. I'm a single father who works as a maintenance man to pay the bills. I don't care about that. You should. Why? Ethan gestured around at the gleaming lobby, the crystal chandeliers, the marble floors, the empire she had built from the ashes of her grief. Because this is your world, Vivian, and this, he held up his calloused, grease-stained hands, is mine. Before Vivian could respond, Rosie came bounding back. Daddy, the starfish looks perfect. Come see. She grabbed Ethan's hand and started pulling him toward the fountain. Then she paused, looking back at Vivian with those impossibly gray eyes. Are you coming too? Vivian looked at Ethan. He looked back at her. 8 years hung in the air between them. Letters never sent. Calls never answered. A love story interrupted before it ever had a chance to become what it was meant to be. And in the middle of it all, a little girl with her father's eyes and a starfish in her hands waiting for an answer. Yes, Vivian said softly. I'm coming too. She slipped her father's letter into her pocket, pressed it close to her heart. Whatever road you choose, I'll be proud of you, always. Theodore Ashford had believed in Ethan Calloway. And now, standing in the lobby of the hotel her father had built, watching the man she had never stopped loving walk toward a fountain with his daughter Vivian, made a decision. She was going to find out what had really happened 8 years ago. She was going to confront her mother, and she was going to fight for the future they had been denied. The past could not be changed, but the future was still unwritten, and Vivian Ashford had never been afraid of a blank page. The address burned in Vivian's mind like a brand. 2847 Coral Street, apartment 3B. She had looked it up in the employee database that same afternoon, telling herself it was just professional curiosity. Just a CEO doing her due diligence. Just a woman who needed answers to questions that had haunted her for 8 years. The lies we tell ourselves are always the most convincing. Coral Street was on the other side of town, from the gleaming towers and manicured lawns of the Ashford Grand. Here the buildings were older. The paint was peeling. The air smelled like salt and diesel from the cannery 3 blocks over. Vivian parked her Mercedes at the curb and sat there for a long moment, hands gripping the steering wheel. What was she doing? Showing up at an employee's home uninvited, crossing every professional boundary she had ever set for herself, risking everything she had built for the ghost of a love that had died 8 years ago. But it had not died. That was the thing. It had not died because she had never let it go. She had carried it with her through Yale and New York and every sleepless night in between. She had dated other men. She had tried to move on. She had told herself 1,000 times that Ethan Calloway was just a summer fling, a teenage rebellion, a mistake she was better off forgetting. And every single time, she had been lying. Vivian got out of the car. The apartment building was 3 stories tall, painted pale yellow with blue shutters. Window boxes full of flowers lined the balconies. Children's bikes were chained to the railings. Somewhere inside, a dog was barking. It was not the kind of place Vivian Ashford belonged, but it was exactly the kind of place Theodore Ashford had grown up. She climbed the stairs slowly, her heels echoing on the concrete. Each step felt like walking towards something inevitable, something she had been running from for 8 years. Apartment 3B was at the end of the hallway on the 3rd floor. Vivian raised her hand to knock, hesitated. What would she even say? I read the letter you found in my dead father's motorcycle, and now I need to know everything. I cannot stop thinking about you, even though you have a daughter and a life that does not include me. I am sorry for 8 years of silence, even though none of it was my fault. She knocked before she could talk herself out of it. Footsteps inside, the sound of a chain being moved. The door opened a crack, and Ethan's gray eyes widened with unmistakable shock. What are you doing here? I need to talk to you, Vivian said. Please. Ethan stared at her for a long moment. His jaw was tight. His shoulders were tense. Everything about his body language screamed that this was a bad idea. But he opened the door anyway. Keep your voice down, he said quietly. Rosie's doing homework. The apartment was small but immaculate. A living room with a worn couch, a coffee table covered in coloring books and crayons. The walls were mostly bare except for a few of Rosie's drawings taped up with obvious care. Through an open doorway, Vivian could see a tiny kitchen. Through another, a glimpse of Rosie bent over a workbook at a small desk, her tongue poking out in concentration. But what caught Vivian's attention was the corner of the living room, a makeshift workshop, tools arranged with military precision on a pegboard, motorcycle parts spread across a drop cloth, oil cans, rags, a manual open to a page about carburetor maintenance. And through the window that led to the fire escape, she could see it, the Harley. Even from here, it was beautiful. Glossy, blue paint that seemed to glow in the evening light, chrome that gleamed like liquid silver, every line classic and perfect. Her father's bike. You kept it on the fire escape, Vivian said softly. Nowhere else to put it. Ethan closed the door behind her. Plus, Rosie likes to sit on it and pretend she's riding to faraway places. I didn't have the heart to move it. Vivian walked to the window, pressed her palm against the glass. The last time she had seen this motorcycle, she was 16 years old and her father was teaching her about freedom. Now here it was 3 stories above Coral Street, watched over by the man she had loved and lost and somehow found again. It's beautiful, she whispered. You did an incredible job restoring it. 2 years of weekends. Ethan came to stand beside her at every penny I could spare. It was the only thing that kept me sane after. He trailed off. After what? Ethan was quiet for a long moment. After everything, he finally said. After your father died, after you stopped answering, after my mom got sick, after I realized that the life I had been dreaming about was never going to happen. He turned to face her. You want to know about the letters? Fine. I'll tell you about the letters. Ethan walked to a bookshelf in the corner. He pulled out a worn notebook, the kind you could buy at any drugstore for a couple of dollars. He flipped it open to reveal pages and pages of handwriting. I didn't keep the originals, he said, but I kept copies. Every word, every single letter I sent to you over those 4 months. He handed her the notebook. Vivian's hands were trembling as she took it. The first page was dated September 15th, 2010, 3 weeks after Theodore's funeral. 2 weeks after Ethan had disappeared from her life without explanation. Dear Vivian, I don't know if you'll ever read this. I don't know if you even want to hear from me after what happened. But I have to try. I got a job at Morrison's garage. $12 an hour. It's not much, but it's honest work. Your father once told me that a man's worth isn't measured by his bank account, but by his word. I'm keeping my word to you, Vivian. I'm building something. The garage is small, but the owner says I have talent. He's teaching me everything he knows. Electrical systems, engine rebuilds, custom fabrication. He says if I work hard enough, maybe someday I can open my own shop. I think about you every day, every hour, every minute. Please write back. Please let me know you're okay. I love you. Ethan. Vivian turned the page. September 22nd, dear Vivian. I called the hotel again today. The front desk said you are not accepting calls. I left another message anyway. Mom's test results came back. It's not good. The doctors are talking about treatment options, but I can see the fear in their eyes. They don't think she's going to make it. I wish you were here. I wish I could hold your hand and hear your voice and believe that everything is going to be okay. Please, Vivian, whatever I did wrong, I'm sorry. Just tell me what I need to do to fix this. I love you. Ethan. September 29th, October 6th, October 13th, letter after letter after letter. Vivian read them all. She read about Ethan's mother getting sicker, about the medical bills piling up, about the double shifts at the garage and the nights spent sleeping in hospital chairs. She read about his dreams, opening his own motorcycle shop, building custom bikes for people who appreciated craftsmanship and care, creating something that would last. She read about his love for her, desperate, unwavering, refusing to die even as the silence stretched on and on. The last letter was dated January 3rd, 2018. Dear Vivian, this is my 16th letter. I don't know if you've read any of them. I don't know if you ever will. Mom died yesterday. 3:47 in the morning, I was holding her hand. Her last words were about you. She said, don't give up on that girl, Ethan. The ones worth loving are always worth waiting for. I don't know if I can keep waiting. I don't know how much more of this silence I can take. But I want you to know something, Vivian. Whatever happens, wherever life takes us, you were the best thing that ever happened to me. You made me believe I could be something more than a mechanic's son with grease under his fingernails. I'll love you until the stars burn out. And if you never come back, I'll spend the rest of my life grateful that I got to love you at all. Forever yours, Ethan. Vivian closed the notebook. Her face was wet with tears. I never got them, she said, her voice breaking. I never got a single one. I know. Ethan's voice was flat, empty, the voice of a man who had made peace with old pain. Your mother made sure of that. How do you know it was her? Because she told me. Vivian. He looked up sharply. Ethan's jaw was tight, his hands clenched at his sides. 2 months after your father's funeral, I went to your house. I needed to see you. I needed to know why you weren't answering. He laughed bitterly. Your mother's security guards threw me out. Literally. Dragged me down the driveway and threw me onto the street like I was garbage. Ethan. But before they did, your mother came out. She stood on the porch in her designer dress and looked at me like I was something she had scraped off the bottom of her shoe. His voice cracked. She said, my daughter has moved on. She's going to Yale. She's going to marry someone worthy of the Ashford name. And you are going to stay away from her, or I will make sure you regret it for the rest of your miserable life. Vivian felt sick. I didn't know, she whispered. I swear to God I didn't know. I believe you. Ethan turned away, walked to the window, stared out at the motorcycle on the fire escape. I believed it for a long time, actually, that you had moved on, that you didn't want me anymore, that everything we had was just a summer fling for a rich girl slumming it with the help. That's not true. I know that now. He turned back to face her. But I didn't know it then. And by the time I figured out that your mother had been lying, it was too late. Too late for what? Ethan was quiet for a long moment. I met Grace in late 2017, he finally said. Right after everything fell apart. She was a nurse at the hospital where my mom was treated. Kind, practical, good with her hands. He smiled sadly. My mom died in January 2018. Grace was there through all of it. We got married a few months later. Not because we were in love, because we both needed stability. You married her. I did. Ethan nodded slowly. We got married at the courthouse. No ceremony, no reception, just two broken people trying to build something stable. He walked to the bookshelf and picked up a framed photograph. A woman with dark hair and kind eyes holding a newborn baby. Rosie was born in late 2018, and for a little while everything felt okay. Not perfect, not the life I had dreamed about, but okay. What happened? Ethan set the photograph down carefully. Grace got sick. Breast cancer. They caught it too late. His voice was steady, but Vivian could see the pain behind his eyes. The grief that never fully healed. She died when Rosie was 10 months old. The last thing she said to me was, "Find her, Ethan. Find the one you really love, and don't let her go this time." Vivian felt her heart shatter. She knew about me. She knew everything. Ethan smiled sadly. I told her on our second date. She said she could see it in my eyes. The way I talked about you. The way I still reached for my phone every time it buzzed, hoping it was finally a message from you. He shook his head. Grace was a good woman. She deserved better than a husband who was still in love with someone else. But she never complained. She just loved me and Rosie with everything she had. I'm so sorry. Don't be. Ethan's voice was firm. Grace gave me Rosie. She gave me a reason to keep going when everything else had fallen apart. I'll be grateful for that until the day I die. A small voice interrupted them. Daddy, Rosie stood in the doorway to her room clutching her stuffed rabbit. Her gray eyes were wide and curious. Is the pretty lady staying for dinner again? Ethan looked at Vivian. Vivian looked at Ethan. 8 years of pain hung in the air between them. Questions unanswered. Wounds unhealed. A love story interrupted before it ever had a chance to become what it was meant to be. Do you want me to stay? Vivian asked quietly. Ethan was silent for a long moment. Then slowly he nodded. Yeah, he said, I think I do. They ate spaghetti at the small kitchen table. Rosie chattered endlessly about her day, her best friend Sophia, her teacher Mrs. Patterson, the book she was reading about a girl who could talk to animals. Vivian listened and laughed and asked questions. She helped Rosie cut her spaghetti into smaller pieces. She wiped sauce off the little girl's chin. She felt something shift inside her chest, something warm and terrifying and wonderful. This could have been her life, if things had been different, if her mother had not interfered, if she and Ethan had found a way. After dinner, Rosie announced that she was going to take a bath. She disappeared down the hallway, leaving the adults alone with the dirty dishes and the weight of everything unsaid. She's incredible, Vivian said, helping Ethan clear the table. You've done an amazing job with her. I try. Ethan's hands stilled in the soapy water. She's the only thing that matters anymore. What about the motorcycle shop, the dreams you wrote about in those letters? Ethan laughed quietly. Dreams are expensive. Rosie needs food, clothes, school supplies. She needs a father who's present, not one who's chasing impossible goals. But your certifications, Rosie mentioned that you have them. Refrigeration, HVAC, plumbing. I have a lot of certifications. Ethan shrugged. Doesn't matter. The hotel job has flexible hours. I can drop Rosie at school and pick her up. I can be there for her plays and her soccer games and her parent-teacher conferences. He turned to face her. I'm not here because I couldn't do anything else, Vivian. I'm here because my daughter comes first. Always. Vivian felt something crack inside her chest. This was not the wild boy who had talked about riding to California. This was not the dreamer who had promised her the world. This was a man, a father, someone who had learned that love meant sacrifice, and sacrifice meant putting someone else's needs before your own. I understand, she said softly. Do you? Ethan stepped closer. Because here's the thing, Vivian. I could have reached out. After Grace died, After I found your father's better, I could have found a way to contact you. Why didn't you? Because I looked you up. His voice was raw. I found articles about the hotel, about you, Forbes, Business Insider, the billionaire CEO who transformed her father's failing hotel into an empire. He gestured around at the small apartment, the second-hand furniture, the cramped kitchen. Look at this place. Look at my life. I scrub floors for a living, Vivian. I fix leaky pipes and unclog toilets and mop up after people who don't even see me. I see you. Now you see me now. Ethan's jaw tightened. But what happens tomorrow? What happens when you wake up and realize that dating the janitor isn't exactly great for your image? I don't care about my image. You should. You've built something incredible. I'm not going to be the reason you lose it. Before Vivian could respond, her phone buzzed. Derek, she answered reluctantly. Ms. Ashford, we have a situation. Health inspector showed up unannounced. She's found violations in the kitchen. Temperature control issues, outdated equipment, a leaky pipe behind the walk-in freezer. Vivian's blood ran cold. How bad? Bad. She's giving us 48 hours to fix everything, or she'll shut us down. Vivian closed her eyes. Health violations could destroy a hotel, especially a luxury hotel that depended on reputation and word of mouth. One bad inspection could undo years of work. I'll be there in 20 minutes, she said. She hung up and looked at Ethan. I have to go. Kitchen emergency. Ethan nodded slowly. I heard. He paused. I'll come with you. What? The violations Derek mentioned. Temperature control, outdated equipment, leaky pipes. That's all maintenance stuff. My stuff. He grabbed his jacket from the back of a chair. Let me help. Ethan, you don't have to. I know. He looked at her steadily. I want to. They arrived at the hotel at 9:47 p.m. The kitchen was chaos. The head chef was arguing with the health inspector. Derek was frantically making phone calls. Staff members stood around looking lost and frightened. Vivian took control immediately. Everyone calm down. Derek, get me a complete list of violations. Chef Morrison, I need you to clear non-essential staff from the kitchen. And someone get me coffee. The health inspector, a severe woman in her 50s named Patricia Hartwell, handed Vivian a clipboard. You have 48 hours, Ms. Ashford. If these issues aren't resolved by then, I'll have no choice but to recommend closure. Vivian scanned the list. Temperature sensors malfunctioning in 2 refrigeration units, a compressor that was running at half efficiency, the leaky pipe Derek had mentioned, outdated ventilation filters, a fryer that needed recalibration. It was a lot of work, too much for their normal maintenance team to handle in 48 hours. May I see that? Ethan took the clipboard from her hands. His eyes moved quickly down the list, assessing each item. I can fix most of this tonight, he said quietly. The pipe will take longer. I'll need parts that might not be available until tomorrow. But I can get temporary patches in place to stop the leak. Patricia Hartwell frowned. Young man, some of these repairs require licensed contractors. I'm licensed. Ethan met her gaze steadily. Refrigeration systems, HVAC, plumbing, commercial kitchen equipment. I have certifications for all of it. He pulled out his phone, opened an email. Here, copies of everything. You can verify with the state board if you want. Patricia studied the documents for a long moment. Very well, she said finally, but I'll be back in exactly 48 hours. If this isn't fixed properly, you're looking at a shutdown. After she left, the kitchen erupted in panicked chatter. Staff members were talking about lost jobs and ruined reputations and what they were going to tell their families. Ethan ignored all of it. He rolled up his sleeves, grabbed his toolkit, and got to work. Vivian watched him move through the kitchen with quiet efficiency, checking connections, testing systems, diagnosing problems with the ease of someone who had been doing this his entire life. This was not a janitor. This was a craftsman, an expert, someone who understood machines the way she understood spreadsheets and profit margins. Hours passed, midnight came and went. Staff members drifted home one by one, reassured by Vivian that everything was under control. Derek stayed until 2 in the morning before she finally ordered him to get some sleep. By 4 a.m., only Vivian and Ethan remained. She brought him coffee, handed him tools, held flashlights when he needed light in awkward spaces. They worked in comfortable silence, a rhythm developing between them that felt as natural as breathing. The sun was coming up when Ethan finally straightened, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Done," he said. Everything, everything except the pipe. I've got a temporary fix in place, but we'll need to replace the whole section tomorrow." He paused. "Today, I mean, later today." Vivian looked around the kitchen. The refrigeration units were humming smoothly. The compressor had stopped making that grinding noise. The ventilation system was running at full capacity. "You're incredible," she breathed. Ethan shrugged. "I just fix things. It's what I do." He set down his tools, rolled down his sleeves. In the pale morning light, Vivian could see the exhaustion in his face, the dark circles under his eyes, the lines of tension in his shoulders. He had worked through the entire night to save her hotel. "Ethan." "Yeah. Why did you do this?" He was quiet for a long moment. "Because I'm not the kind of man who walks away when someone needs help. Even if that someone is a billionaire CEO who doesn't need anything from anyone." "That's not true." "What? I need things." Vivian stepped closer. "I need answers. I need closure. I need to understand why my mother destroyed everything we had." She reached out, took his calloused hand in hers. "And I need you to know that I never stopped loving you, not for a single day in 8 years. Ethan's breath caught. "Vivian, I know this is complicated. I know you have Rosie. I know there are 1,000 reasons why this shouldn't work." She tightened her grip on his hand. "But I also know that I've been trying to fill a hole in my heart for 8 years, and the only thing that's ever fit is you." Ethan stared at her for a long moment. Then he pulled her into his arms and kissed her. It was not a gentle kiss. It was 8 years of longing and pain and hope, all crashing together like waves against the shore. Vivian wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed him back with everything she had. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Vivian was crying. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm sorry for believing the worst. I'm sorry for not fighting harder." "You have nothing to apologize for." Ethan's voice was rough. "Your mother lied to both of us. She's the one who should be sorry." As if summoned by the mention of her name, Vivian's phone buzzed. A text from Eleanor. "We need to talk. My office. 9 a.m. Vivian stared at the message. "What is it?" Ethan asked. "My mother." Vivian's jaw tightened. "She wants to meet." "Are you going?" Vivian looked at him, at the man who had waited 8 years, who had worked through the night to save her hotel, who had never stopped loving her even when he thought she had abandoned him. "Yes," she said, "I'm going, and this time I'm not going to let her manipulate me." Eleanor Ashford's office was on the top floor of the Ashford building downtown. It was a temple to wealth and power, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, artwork that cost more than most people's houses, furniture imported from Italy. Eleanor sat behind her mahogany desk like a queen on her throne. At 62, she was still beautiful. Silver hair perfectly styled, designer suit immaculately tailored, eyes as cold and sharp as diamonds. "Sit down, Vivian." Vivian remained standing. "I know what you did." Eleanor's expression did not change. "What exactly do you think I did?" 16 letters, 16 phone calls. You intercepted every single one. You made Ethan think I had abandoned him. You made me think he didn't care." Vivian's voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. "You stole 8 years of my life." Eleanor sighed. "I protected you." "Protected me?" "That boy was beneath you, Vivian. No education, no prospects, no future. He would have dragged you down to his level." "His level?" Vivian laughed bitterly. "He spent last night saving your hotel from a health inspection failure. He has more certifications than half our engineering staff. He's raising a beautiful daughter on his own while working 2 jobs. She leaned forward, palms flat on her mother's desk. "Ethan Calloway has more integrity in his little finger than you have in your entire body." Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "I see he's already gotten to you. How disappointing." "Gotten to me?" "Manipulated you, made you feel sorry for him. It's what men like him do, Vivian. They prey on women with money and power. You don't know anything about him." "I know enough." Eleanor walked to the window, looked out at the city below. "I know he's a maintenance worker who cleans toilets for a living. I know he has a child from another woman. I know he's been lurking around your hotel for months, waiting for the perfect opportunity to worm his way back into your life." She turned to face her daughter. "Did you ever wonder why he took that job, Vivian? Of all the hotels in this city, he chose yours. That's not coincidence, that's strategy." For a moment, doubt flickered in Vivian's mind. Then she remembered the letter, her father's letter. "Whatever road you choose, I'll be proud of you. Always." "Dad knew about Ethan," Vivian said quietly. "He approved of him." Eleanor's face went pale. "What? I found a letter. Dad wrote it 3 weeks before he died. He knew about us. He knew about Ethan. And he gave us his blessing." "That's impossible." "It's the truth." Vivian pulled the letter from her pocket, held it up. "Here, read it yourself." Eleanor stared at the yellowed paper like it was a live grenade. "Theodore was a romantic," she said finally. "He always let his heart overrule his head. He was a good man, and he would be ashamed of what you've done." Eleanor's composure cracked. "I did it for you," she shouted. "Everything I've done has been for you. I sacrificed my marriage, my happiness, my entire life to make sure you had every opportunity. And this is how you repay me, by throwing yourself at some great monkey who can't even afford to buy his daughter new shoes." "I'd rather have Ethan's love than all your money," Vivian said simply. The words hung in the air between them. Then Eleanor's expression hardened into something cold and dangerous. "Very well," she said quietly. "If you want to destroy your life, I can't stop you. But I can protect what remains of this family's reputation." She picked up her phone. "I'm calling an emergency meeting of the board. Let's see how your shareholders feel about the CEO dating the janitor." Vivian felt her stomach drop. "You wouldn't. Watch me." The board meeting was held at 2 p.m. in the Ashford Grand's executive conference room. 12 men and women sat around the polished table. Bankers, investors, industry veterans, people who had billions of dollars riding on Vivian's decisions. Eleanor sat at the head of the table, a satisfied smile playing at the corners of her lips. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," she said. "I'm afraid we have a serious matter to discuss." She gestured to a folder in front of her. "It has come to my attention that our CEO has become romantically involved with a member of the maintenance staff, a man named Ethan Calloway." Murmurs rippled around the table. "Mr. Calloway is a widower with a 7-year-old daughter. He has no advanced education, no professional credentials beyond basic trade certifications. And most importantly, he has a prior relationship with Vivian that dates back to her teenage years." Eleanor looked directly at her daughter. "This relationship represents a serious conflict of interest, a liability to our brand, and a potential PR nightmare if the media gets wind of it." The board members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "I move," Eleanor continued, "that we request Vivian's resignation as CEO for the good of the company." Silence. Then Vivian stood up. "May I speak?" Eleanor gestured magnanimously. "Of course, it's your funeral." Vivian looked around the table, at the faces of people who had doubted her, who had questioned her youth, her gender, her right to lead, and she smiled. "My father built this hotel with his own hands," she said quietly. "He started with nothing, a loan he couldn't afford, a dream everyone said was impossible." She walked slowly around the table. "He didn't care about status. He didn't care about appearances. He cared about people, about quality, about building something that would last." She stopped behind Eleanor's chair. "In the 3 years since I took over, I've tripled this company's value. I've opened 4 new properties. I've increased revenue by 400%. I've built a reputation that brings in clients who pay $2,000 a night for the privilege of staying in rooms that bear my father's name." She looked at each board member in turn. "You didn't invest in the Ashford name. You invested in me, in my vision, in my ability to turn a struggling hotel into an empire." She placed her hands on the back of Eleanor's chair. "And yes, I am in a relationship with Ethan Calloway, a man who spent last night saving this hotel from a health inspection failure, a man who has more integrity and character than anyone else in this room." Eleanor tried to stand, but Vivian held her firmly in place. "If you want to remove me because I fell in love with someone my mother doesn't approve of, that's your choice. But I want you to ask yourself something first." She looked directly at the board chairman, a silver-haired man named Robert Whitmore. "Can you find someone else who will work as hard as I do, who will sacrifice as much as I have, who will care about this company the way I care about it. She stepped back from Eleanor's chair. Because I am Theodore Ashford's daughter, and I will not apologize for loving someone who sees me for who I am not what I'm worth. Silence filled the room. Then Robert Whitmore cleared his throat. All in favor of Ms. Ashford's removal, raise your hand. Eleanor's hand shot up. No one else moved. All opposed. 11 hands rose into the air. Robert nodded. Motion denied. This meeting is adjourned. Eleanor sat frozen in her chair as the board members filed out. Her face was pale. Her hands were trembling. Vivian leaned down and whispered in her mother's ear, You destroyed 16 letters. You stole 8 years from me. The least you can do now is stay out of my way. Then she straightened smooth her royal blue blazer and walked out of the conference room. She did not look back. Ethan was waiting for her in the lobby. He stood by the fountain where they had reunited that morning. Just that morning. It felt like a lifetime ago. Rosie was with him, holding his hand, wearing a purple dress and the biggest smile Vivian had ever seen. Miss Vivian, Rosie shouted, breaking free from her father and running across the marble floor. Daddy says you saved the whole hotel. Is it true? Are you like a superhero? Vivian crouched down and caught the little girl in her arms. I don't know about superhero, she said, but I try my best. Daddy says you're the bravest person he knows. Rosie's gray eyes were wide and serious, even braver than Wonder Woman. Vivian looked up at Ethan. He was smiling, a real smile, the first one she had seen since they had reunited. I heard what happened, he said. Derek told me. News travels fast. You stood up to your mother in front of the whole board. I did. Ethan walked toward her slowly. You could have lost everything. Your guy, your reputation, everything you've built. I know. He stopped in front of her, close enough to touch. Why would you risk all of that for me? Vivian stood up, still holding Rosie's hand. Because some things are worth more than money and power, she said softly. Because my father believed in you. Because your late wife believed in us. She reached up, touched his face. And because I've spent 8 years trying to forget you, and I'm tired of pretending I ever could. Ethan pulled her into his arms. Rosie squeezed between them, hugging them both. Does this mean we're all friends now? She asked. Vivian laughed through her tears. Yeah, sweetheart, she said. I think it does. 1 month changed everything. Vivian Ashford learned to change oil on a Sunday afternoon in late January. She knelt on the fire escape of Ethan's apartment, her designer jeans stained with grease, her perfectly manicured nails chipped and dirty. The winter sun was cold but bright, casting long shadows across the blue paint of the Harley. Ethan crouched beside her, guiding her hands with patient precision. Not too tight, he said quietly. You want it snug, but if you over-tighten, you'll strip the threads. Vivian adjusted her grip on the wrench, turned it slowly, felt the bolt catch and hold. Like that. Perfect. She sat back on her heels, wiping sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand, leaving a streak of oil across her skin. Ethan laughed. It was a sound Vivian had not heard enough of in the past 8 years, a sound she had almost forgotten, deep and warm and genuine. What? She demanded. Nothing. He reached out, rubbed his thumb across her cheek. You just have a little something. I probably look like a mess. You look beautiful. The words were simple, sincere, the kind of thing Ethan said without thinking because he meant it, because he had never learned to hide what he felt. Vivian felt her heart swell. This was their Sunday routine now. Breakfast at the apartment, pancakes with chocolate chips for Rosie, coffee and quiet conversation for the adults. Then out to the fire escape, to work on the Harley while Rosie colored nearby, occasionally asking questions, occasionally demanding attention, always filling the silence with her endless chatter. It was not the life Vivian had imagined for herself. It was better. Inside the apartment, Rosie was sprawled on the living room floor with her coloring books and crayons. She had decided that today's project was drawing a picture of all 3 of them on the motorcycle. Miss Vivian, she called through the open window, what color should I make your hair? Brown, Vivian called back. But brown is boring. Can I make it purple? Ethan snorted. Let her make it purple, he murmured. Pick your battles. Purple is fine, sweetheart. Yay. Vivian shook her head, smiling despite herself. A month ago, she had been a billionaire CEO who lived alone in a penthouse suite, who ate takeout at her desk most nights, who could not remember the last time she had laughed without an agenda behind it. Now she had grease under her fingernails and a 7-year-old asking about hair colors and a man who looked at her like she was the only star in the sky. Her father would have loved this. The thought came unbidden, sudden, and sharp. Theodore Ashford had believed in Ethan. He had seen something in the rough-edged mechanic that Eleanor had been too proud to notice. He had given his blessing in a letter hidden inside a motorcycle that had somehow found its way back to the people who needed it most. Fate, coincidence, providence. Vivian did not know what to call it. She just knew it felt right. "Hey," Ethan said quietly. "Where'd you go?" Vivian blinked, realized she had been staring at the gas tank of the Harley, at the spot where Ethan had found her father's letter all those years ago. "Just thinking," she said, about how strange life is, how things work out in ways you never expect." Ethan nodded slowly. "I used to think about that a lot. When I was rebuilding this bike, every bolt I replaced, every wire I reconnected. I kept wondering why. Why did I feel so drawn to this particular motorcycle? Why did I spend 2 years of my life restoring something that should have meant nothing to me?" He ran his palm along the curve of the gas tank. "Now I think I know." "Why?" Ethan looked at her. "Because your father put something in this bike, not just parts and labor. He put love, hope, dreams for you, and somehow I could feel it, even before I knew whose bike it was." He paused. "I think I was supposed to find it. I think it was supposed to bring us back together." Vivian felt tears prick at her eyes. "You're a romantic Ethan Calloway." Guilty as charged. He leaned in and kissed her, soft and slow. The kind of kiss that did not need to lead anywhere. The kind that was complete in itself. When they broke apart, Rosie was watching them through the window with a delighted grin. "Are you going to get married?" she asked. Ethan choked. Vivian laughed. "We're just kissing, sweetheart. But in movies, kissing means you're going to get married, and then you live happily ever after." "Life isn't like the movies," Ethan said carefully. "Why not?" It was a simple question. The kind only children asked. The kind that cut straight to the heart of things. Why not? Why couldn't life be like the movies? Why couldn't love lead to marriage and happily ever after? Vivian looked at Ethan, at the man who had waited 8 years, who had never stopped loving her, who had raised a beautiful daughter on his own while working 2 jobs and dreaming of a future he thought he would never have. Why not? Indeed, the discovery happened on a Tuesday afternoon. Vivian was at her office buried in quarterly reports when her phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. "Rosie found something. Can you come over tonight? It's important." She rearranged her entire evening schedule and drove to Coral Street as soon as she could. When she arrived, Rosie was sitting on the couch with a yellowed envelope in her lap. Her gray eyes were wide and serious. Ethan stood by the window, his expression unreadable. "What's going on?" Vivian asked. "Show her," Ethan said quietly. Rosie held up the envelope. "I was looking for my bracelet," she explained, "the one with the purple beads. I dropped it behind Daddy's toolboard, and I had to move everything to find it." She pointed to the makeshift workshop in the corner. The pegboard had been pulled away from the wall, revealing a narrow gap behind it. "This was stuck way back there. It must have fallen behind a long time ago because it's really dusty and old." Vivian took the envelope with trembling hands. Her name was written across the front, faded but legible. Not Ethan's handwriting, her father's. "I don't understand," she said slowly. "I already have Dad's letter, the one Ethan found in the motorcycle." Ethan shook his head. "This is different. I've never seen this envelope before. It must have gotten mixed in with my tools when I was moving the bike parts and then fallen behind the board." Vivian turned the envelope over. The seal had never been broken. "It's addressed to me," she whispered, "but I never received it." She looked at Ethan. "Open it," he said. Her hands were shaking as she slid her finger under the flap. Inside were 2 pieces of paper. One was a letter in her father's handwriting. The other was also in her father's handwriting, but addressed to someone else, to Ethan. The first letter was dated August 10th, 2017, 2 weeks before Theodore died. "My dearest Vivian, if you're reading this, then you've found the motorcycle. Or more likely someone has found it and brought it back to you. I've been thinking a lot about that boy of yours, The one with the grease under his fingernails and the stars in his eyes. The one who looks at you like you're the only thing that matters in this whole complicated world. Your mother doesn't approve. She never will. She sees his background, his bank account, his prospects. She doesn't see what I see. She doesn't see that he reminds me of myself. I was him once, young and hungry, and desperately in love with a woman I thought was too good for me. Your grandfather gave me a chance when no one else would. He saw something in me that I couldn't even see in myself. I want to do the same for your boy. I've written him a letter. It's in this envelope. I'm going to hide it in the toolbox that goes with the motorcycle. If he ever finds it, he'll know that he has my blessing. And if you find it first, then give it to him. Tell him that Theodore Ashford believes in him. Tell him that I am trusting him to take care of my little girl. Whatever road you choose, sweetheart, I'll be proud of you, always. Love you to the moon and back, Dad. Vivian's hands were trembling so badly she could barely unfold the second letter, the one addressed to Ethan. Dear Ethan, you don't know me, but I know you. I've watched you with my daughter this summer. I've seen the way you look at her, the way you make her laugh, the way she lights up when she talks about you. I'm not supposed to approve. Eleanor certainly doesn't. She thinks you're beneath us, too poor, too rough, too different from the life she imagined for Vivian. But here's what I know, young man. When I was your age, I had grease under my fingernails too. I had nothing but dreams and a willingness to work harder than anyone else. Everyone said I wasn't good enough for Eleanor Whitmore. Her family had money, status, a name that meant something. I proved them wrong, not with words, with work, with decades of building something from nothing. I see the same fire in you that I had in myself, the same hunger, the same refusal to give up. So here's my challenge to you, Ethan Calloway. If you're serious about my daughter, prove it. Not with letters and phone calls and romantic gestures. Prove it with work. Build something. Show her you're worth the fight. Show me you're worth the fight. And if you do, you'll have my blessing. I'm putting this letter in the toolbox that goes with my motorcycle, the one I've been restoring for 10 years. I'm planning to give it to Vivian someday. If she finds this letter, she'll know I believed in you. And if you find it first, then maybe fate is telling you something. Build something, Ethan. Make it beautiful. Make it last. And take care of my little girl. Dear Theodore Ashford. Vivian could not breathe. She read the letter again and again and again. Her father had written to Ethan. He had given him a challenge. He had offered his blessing to a boy he had never even spoken to, based on nothing but faith and intuition and the memory of his own young love. I didn't know, Ethan said, his voice rough. I swear to God, Vivian, I didn't know this letter existed. I found your father's letter to you in the motorcycle years ago, but this must have gotten separated somehow, mixed in with the tools, lost. Until now, Vivian whispered. Until now. She looked up at him through tears. He believed in you. He saw what I saw. He challenged me. Ethan's voice cracked. He told me to build something, to prove myself, saying, and you did. Vivian gestured around at the apartment, at the workshop in the corner, at the Harley on the fire escape, at Rosie who was watching them with wet and uncertain eyes. You built all of this. You raised Rosie. You restored the motorcycle. You became someone worthy of his blessing. Ethan shook his head. I didn't do it for him. I didn't even know about the letter. But you did it anyway. Vivian crossed the room, took his face in her hands. You worked tooth huscum. You got your certifications. You raised your daughter alone. You never gave up even when everyone else would have. She kissed him softly. You passed his test, Ethan. You passed it without even knowing you were taking it. Ethan pulled her into his arms and held her tight. Over his shoulder, Vivian saw Rosie still watching them. The little girl's eyes were bright with tears she did not fully understand. Why is everyone crying? Rosie asked. Did something bad happen? Vivian laughed through her tears. No, sweetheart. Something good happened. Something very, very good. The knock on the door came 3 days later. Vivian was at Ethan's apartment helping Rosie with her homework. Simple math problems that made Rosie scrunch up her face in concentration, and Vivian remember how much she had hated fractions as a child. Ethan answered the door. Eleanor Ashford stood in the hallway. She looked different, smaller somehow. The sharp edges of her designer suit could not hide the slump in her shoulders, the exhaustion in her eyes. She was holding a box. "May I come in?" she asked quietly. Ethan did not move. "Why?" "I have something for Vivian, something I should have given her a long time ago." Vivian stood up slowly, walked to the door, stood beside Ethan with her arms crossed over her chest. "Mother." "Vivian." They stared at each other for a long moment. Then Eleanor held out the box. "I kept them," she said. "All 16 letters. I told myself I was protecting you. I told myself I would destroy them someday when enough time had passed." Her voice cracked. "But I couldn't. Every time I tried, it felt like murdering something. Something precious. Something real." Vivian took the box with numb fingers. Inside were 16 envelopes, yellowed with age, unopened, each one addressed to her in Ethan's handwriting. "I read them," Eleanor admitted. "Every single one. I told myself I was just checking to make sure he wasn't threatening you or harassing you." She laughed bitterly. "But that wasn't why. I read them because I wanted to understand. What did my daughter see in this boy? Why was she willing to throw everything away for someone with nothing?" Eleanor looked at Ethan. "And after 16 letters, I understood. You loved her. Really loved her. Not her money or her name or what she could do for you. Just her." She turned back to Vivian. "Your father knew about the boy. He told me to give Ethan a chance. He said that a man who could write letters like that was a man worth believing in." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I didn't listen. I thought I knew better. I thought I was protecting you from making the same mistake I made." "What mistake?" Vivian asked. Eleanor was quiet for a long moment. "Marrying for love instead of sense. Your father and I, we were passionate, wild. We thought love would conquer everything." She shook her head. "But love doesn't pay the bills. Love doesn't stop the fights or the disappointments or the slow erosion of everything you thought you knew about each other. Dad loved you until the day he died." "I know." Eleanor's eyes glistened. "And I loved him. But love wasn't enough to make me happy. I wanted more. Security, status, a life that matched the dreams I had as a girl." She looked at the small apartment, the secondhand furniture, the makeshift workshop in the corner. "I didn't want this for you. I wanted you to have everything I never had. A husband who could give you the world. A life without struggle or sacrifice." Vivian felt something shift inside her chest. Not forgiveness, not yet, but understanding. "You were wrong," she said quietly, "about what I wanted, about what would make me happy. I know. You destroyed 8 years of my life. I know. You lied to me, manipulated me, made me believe the worst about someone I loved." "I know." Eleanor's voice broke. "And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Vivian. I thought I was protecting you, but all I did was hurt you." She reached into her pocket and pulled out something small. A watch, gold and elegant with a worn leather band. "This was your father's," she said. "He wore it every day until he died. I was going to give it to you on your wedding day, but—" She trailed off. "I want you to have it now, as a peace offering, as a reminder that your father believed in love even when I didn't." Vivian took the watch with trembling hands. She remembered this watch, her father checking the time during long meetings, tapping it absently while he thought through problems, wearing it on his wrist in every photograph she had of him. "Thank you," she said softly. Eleanor nodded, then she turned to leave. "Mother." Eleanor paused, looking back over her shoulder. "This doesn't fix everything," Vivian said. "I'm still angry. I'm still hurt. I don't know if I'll ever fully forgive you." "I understand, but I'm willing to try, for Dad's sake, for my own sake." She looked at Ethan, who had been standing silently through the entire exchange. "And for the sake of the family we're building." Eleanor's eyes flickered to Rosie, who was peering around the corner with undisguised curiosity. "She's beautiful," Eleanor said quietly. "She looks like her father." "She's wonderful," Vivian replied. "You should get to know her. Someday, when you're ready." Eleanor nodded slowly. "I'd like that." Then she walked away, her footsteps echoing down the hallway. Vivian stood in the doorway for a long moment, the box of letters in one hand and her father's watch in the other. Ethan came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist. You okay? I don't know. Vivian leaned back against him. I don't know how to feel. That's okay. You don't have to figure it out right now. Rosie appeared beside them, tugging on Vivian's sleeve. Was that your mommy? Yes, sweetheart. She looks sad. Did you make her sad? No. Vivian crouched down, looked into Rosie's gray eyes. She made some mistakes a long time ago, and she's sorry about them. But being sorry doesn't make the hurt go away. Rosie nodded solemnly, like when Tommy pushed me on the playground and said sorry, but my knee still hurt. Exactly like that. But Tommy's my friend now. We share crayons and everything. Vivian smiled despite herself. Maybe someday it'll be like that with my mom too. 6 months passed like water through open fingers. Spring turned to summer. Summer faded into fall. Vivian learned the names of every part of the Harley's engine. She learned how to make Rosie's favorite chocolate chip pancakes. She learned the particular sound of Ethan's laugh when he was truly happy and the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. Rosie learned about profit margins and customer satisfaction. She learned that running a hotel was harder than it looked. She learned that Miss Vivian was not just Daddy's friend, but something more, something permanent, something like family. Ethan learned to let go of the pride that had kept him struggling alone for so long. He learned that accepting help was not the same as weakness. He learned that Vivian loved him, not in spite of his job and his circumstances, but because of who he was underneath all of it. They learned together. On a Saturday afternoon in October, exactly 1 year after their reunion in the lobby of the Ashford Grand, Ethan taught Rosie to ride the Harley. Not really ride, of course. She was only 8 years old now. But he sat her on the seat and walked beside her as she pretended to steer, making vroom. Vroom sounds with her mouth and laughing with pure, uncomplicated joy. Vivian watched from the edge of the parking lot they had borrowed for the occasion. An empty stretch of asphalt behind a closed warehouse where there was nothing to hit and no one to see. The California sun was warm on her face. The breeze smelled like salt from the ocean 3 blocks away. She had her father's watch on her wrist, his letter in her pocket, the sea glass pendant Rosie had given her around her neck, and in her other pocket something new, a ring. She had bought it 3 weeks ago, a simple band with a small diamond. Nothing flashy, nothing that would make Ethan uncomfortable or out of place. She had been carrying it with her ever since, waiting for the right moment. Maybe today was the day. Maybe today she would finally ask the question she had been too afraid to ask. Ethan looked up, caught her eyes, smiled. That smile, the one that had not changed since he was 22, and she was 18, and the whole world felt like it was spinning just for them. Come on, he called. Your turn. Vivian laughed. I don't think so. Why not? You've been working on this bike for months. Don't you want to see what it feels like to ride it? Rosie scrambled off the seat, bouncing with excitement. Do it. Miss Vivian, do it, do it, do it. Vivian walked slowly across the parking lot. The Harley gleamed in the afternoon light, blue as the summer sky, blue as her father's dreams. I don't know how to ride a motorcycle, she said. I'll teach you. Ethan held out his hand. I'll be right here the whole time. She took his hand. He helped her onto the seat, showed her where to put her feet, how to hold the handlebars. Then he climbed on behind her, his arms wrapping around her waist. Just start slow, he murmured in her ear. Feel the engine. Let it tell you what it wants. Vivian turned the key. The Harley rumbled to life beneath her, a deep vibration that she felt in her bones. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. This bike isn't about speed. It's about freedom. The freedom to choose your own road. She eased forward slowly, letting the motorcycle roll across the empty lot. Ethan's arms were warm around her. Rosie was cheering from the sidelines. And for the first time in her life, Vivian understood what her father had meant. This was freedom. Not the freedom of money or success or power. The freedom to love without fear, to choose without regret, to build a life that meant something with people who meant everything. She brought the bike to a gentle stop, killed the engine. Ethan climbed off, came around to face her. So, he asked, what did you think? Vivian looked at him, at this man who had waited 8 years, who had built something from nothing, who had proved himself worthy of her father's blessing without even knowing he was being tested. Ethan, Yeah, I have something to ask you. She reached into her pocket, pulled out the ring. Ethan's eyes went wide. Vivian, I know this is supposed to be your job. I know there are traditions and expectations and proper ways of doing things. She held up the ring, the diamond catching the California sun. But I've spent too much of my life waiting for things to happen the way they're supposed to. I don't want to wait anymore. Rosie had gone quiet, watching with enormous eyes. Ethan Calloway, you're stubborn and proud, and you work too hard, and you snore when you sleep on your back. He laughed despite himself. You make terrible coffee. You always forget to put the toilet seat down. And you have this annoying habit of being right about things when I really want you to be wrong. She stepped closer. But you're also the kindest man I've ever known, the best father I've ever seen, and the only person who has ever made me feel like I'm enough exactly as I am. Tears were streaming down her face now. Will you marry me? Silence. The waves crashed in the distance. A seagull cried overhead. The Harley ticked softly as its engine cooled. Then Ethan pulled her into his arms and kissed her like the world was ending. Yes, he said against her lips. Yes, yes, yes. Rosie let out a shriek of joy and came running across the parking lot, throwing herself at both of them. Does this mean Miss Vivian is going to be my mommy now? Ethan looked at Vivian. Vivian looked at Rosie. Would you want that? She asked softly. Would you want me to be your family? Rosie's gray eyes were shining. I've wanted that since the first day I met you, she said. When you let me make your hair purple in my drawing and you didn't even get mad. Vivian laughed through her tears. Then yes, sweetheart, I'm going to be your family. If you'll have me. Rosie threw her arms around Vivian's neck. I'll have you forever and ever, she said, until the stars burn out. Vivian held her tight. Until the stars burn out. The same words Ethan had written in his 16th letter all those years ago. The words that had somehow found their way to her despite everything her mother had done to keep them apart. Fate, coincidence, providence. She still did not know what to call it, but she knew what it felt like. It felt like home. The wedding was small, 50 people in the garden behind the Ashford Grand, where Theodore Ashford had once dreamed of building something that would last forever. Vivian wore her mother's wedding dress, altered to fit her smaller frame. Eleanor had offered it tentatively, uncertain of her welcome, grateful when Vivian accepted. They were not fully reconciled. Perhaps they never would be, but they were trying. Ethan wore a simple gray suit that matched his eyes. Rosie wore a white dress with purple flowers chosen by herself from a catalog of options that Vivian had provided. The Harley stood at the edge of the garden, polished to a mirror shine adorned with white ribbons. Theodore's bike, Theodore's blessing. Theodore's love carried forward through the years. When Vivian walked down the aisle, she carried her father's watch in her pocket and his letter against her heart. Ethan took her hands, looked into her eyes. I wrote you 16 letters, he said. 16 letters that you never got to read. So I'm going to tell you now in front of everyone what I said in every single one of them. His voice was steady, strong. I love you, Vivian Ashford. I loved you when I was 22 and stupid and thought I could conquer the world. I loved you when I was alone and broken and convinced I would never see you again. He squeezed her hands. I loved you through 8 years of silence, through letters that were never answered, through a marriage to someone else in the death of dreams I thought were gone forever. And I love you now, more than I did then, more than I thought it was possible to love anyone. He smiled, that crooked smile that had not changed since he was a boy with grease under his fingernails and stars in his eyes. Your father asked me to build something, to prove I was worth the fight. He gestured around at the gathered guests, at Rosie standing beside him in her flower girl dress, at the hotel rising behind them, the legacy of a man who had believed in second chances. This is what I built, not alone, but with you, with Rosie, with everyone who refused to give up on us. His voice cracked. I'm not a rich man, Vivian. I can't have you yachts or private jets or houses in every city, but I can give you this. He placed his hand over his heart. Everything I am, everything I have, every breath in my body until the day I die. That's all I ever wanted, Vivian whispered. Then let's make it official. 6 months later, Vivian stood on the balcony of her penthouse watching the sunset paint the ocean in shades of gold and crimson. Below her on the beach, Ethan was teaching Rosie to build sandcastles. Their laughter drifted up on the evening breeze, mixing with the crash of waves and the cry of seagulls. In Vivian's hand was an old photograph, Theodore Ashford on his blue Harley, younger than she had ever known him, smiling like a man who had found everything he was looking for. On the back of the photograph in Ethan's handwriting were words that had become their family motto. He would have been proud of you. I know I am. Vivian smiled through the tears that blurred her vision. Her father had been right about so many things, about the motorcycle, about freedom, about the boy with grease under his fingernails who had become the man she married. But most of all, he had been right about this. Some roads take longer than others. They twist and turn and double back. They lead through valleys of shadow and mountains of despair. They break hearts and test faith and make you wonder if you will ever find your way. But the ones worth traveling always lead you home. Vivian tucked the photograph into her pocket, wiped her eyes, smoothed her dress. Then she walked down the stairs and out onto the beach where her family was waiting. Rosie looked up with a gap-toothed grin, her hands covered in sand. Mommy, come look. We made a castle, Mommy. The word still made Vivian's heart skip. It's beautiful, sweetheart. Ethan stood up, wrapped his arm around her waist. Everything okay? Everything's perfect. She leaned into him, feeling the warmth of his body, the steady beat of his heart. Above them, the stars were beginning to appear, one by one like candles being lit in an infinite darkness. Rosie pointed at the brightest one. That's Mommy Grace, she said matter-of-factly. She's watching over us. And Grandpa Theodore, Vivian added softly. He's up there too. Ethan pulled them both closer. They're proud of us, he said. I can feel it. Vivian looked up at the stars, at the legacy of love that stretched across years and miles and lifetimes. Yeah, she whispered. I can feel it too. The waves crashed against the shore. The stars wheeled overhead. A little girl with gray eyes and a gap-toothed smile chattered about castles and stars and happily ever afters. And somewhere in that infinite darkness, Theodore Ashford was smiling. His daughter had found her road, and it had led her home.